I posted a picture on my Facebook page the other day and on YouTube regarding a mystery steam engine that I've been working on. I did insert a clue to the post which gave away what the mystery steam engine is, and the clue wasn't one of the pictures, it was in the text. Specifically, these two words circled in red. And for those of you that don't know what the general is, it's this little cutie right here. I've been searching for one of these for quite some time, and I spotted two on that well-known auction site a couple of months ago. Now, one of them was advertised as new in box, and it was up for, I think it was up for about £85, which is an astronomical amount of money for a kit like this, but because of its rarity was probably worth it. Now I spotted another one, the one that I bought, for considerably less. All the parts had been de-sprued, so I thought any sort of historical value that it might have as being a kit, as for a collector's piece, had already been gone because the pieces had been de-sprued. Therefore I could quite legitimately build it and it would still be worth probably as much as I paid for it. I started construction on the tender following some advice that I was given many years ago. That being, if you start with the main frames and the boiler, the tendency is to put all of your effort into that and then rush to finish on the tender. With the base and the four sides glued together, I turned my attention to the top, which was a dual moulding of the top of the tender and of the wood that was used to fire the boiler. When I put this on, it left about a quarter of a millimetre of a lip underneath, and I'm sure that shouldn't be there, which made me question my alignment of the sides and the ends. In the end, I just filled the gap with some filler. Filling and then filing flat, a quick wash in some soapy water led me to my first visit to the paint shop, and it just got a coat of satin black. Once dry, I then masked all that black and proceeded to paint the wood that was on the top. I don't know, I struggle to call it wood or fuel or I don't know. Anyway, beige was the colour that I used as an undercoat, and then I proceeded to paint all of the individual pieces of wood a sort of barky brown colour. I used 3 different shades of brown. When I started doing this little bit, I thought it was going to be like hacking through a never-ending forest. But I'm glad I did, because I ended up with a pile of chopped wood, big enough to fire a small steam engine. And it didn't take that long, probably about an hour. With a dark wash applied to fill in the gaps between the logs and the masking tape removed, it made it look even better. Moving on to the main body, the two halves fit together nicely to create the boiler and the firebox, the wheel arches, the dome and the base of the chimney. For a fairly old kit, the parts fitted together really well, with few seams and minimal cleanup. I was also pleasantly surprised at the amount of detail that went into this sort of relatively small, cheap-end sort of kit. I also debated with myself quite a lot about what I wanted to do with this kit, whether I wanted to just out of the box build it, or slightly enhance it, or go to town on it. I sort of erred on the slight enhancement. And one of those enhancements was just filing out the cowcatcher to make it see-through as opposed to just a block of plastic. And when I say filed, I meant drilled. Well, filed with a drill, because it was the only way I could think of how to do it. And miraculously, being 0.75 of a drill, I thought I was going to break half a dozen, but didn't break one, which was a double bonus. The cab was next, and as you can see, it was just 5 parts. the front, the back, two sides and a roof. And once it was glued together, I set it aside as a sub-assembly ready for painting. I needed to build the cab at this stage because it also dictated the position of the side running boards. And they were the last big pieces to go on. The rest of it was small detail parts like the bell and handrail holders and the nameplates. And as main construction is nearly complete, I want to just read the historical text that came with this kit on the instruction sheet, so we can appreciate this engine's status and standing in American history. During the American Civil War in April 1862, at a station called Big Shanty on the Western and Atlantic Railroad in Georgia, a group of Yankee spies led by James Andrews managed to capture a wood-burning locomotive, the General, while the crew were at breakfast. The Yankees raced off with the engine towards the north in an attempt to burn bridges and tear up tracks, thus breaking the supply line to strategically important Chattanooga, Tennessee, making the city easy to capture. The Yankees were immediately pursued by the quick-thinking conductor and a shop foreman, first on foot and then on a handcar, and finally with an engine, the Texas. Up the line raced the General, stopping here and there while its captors cut telegraph wires and set fire to culverts and set up barricades to stop the pursuit. Close behind roared the Texas, with troops picked up along the way, desperately trying to overtake the General. Mile after mile raced the two trains, with Andrews trying every method he could think of to stop the pursuing Texas. But luck was with the Confederates, and they continued to gain. Finally, as a last resort, the Union men set fire to a wooden-covered bridge, thinking that this barrier of fire would halt the pursuit. The General had just enough steam pressure left to roll into the next fuel yard. The Texas, however, plunged headlong through the blazing bridge, and the chase was over. There was no time left to stock the General with fuel, and the Union men fled across country. Such is the story of one of the most daring railroad adventures in history, and a legend of the American Civil War. In the early years of cinematography, Buster Keaton made a film about the General. I'm sure you could probably find it on YouTube somewhere. If I remember, I'll leave a link. In the corner above and in the description below, I'll leave another link to a video I found that told the story of the chase in much more detail, and it gives a history of the locomotive's subsequent years after the Civil War up until the present day. Yes, to the present day, because this locomotive is preserved and it currently resides at the Southern Museum of Civil War and Locomotive History in a town that I can't pronounce, near Atlanta in Georgia, America. I'll leave a link for that in the description below as well, and just to say that I might actually have a holiday this year and go and visit. While I've been yakking on, you'll have noticed that I painted the body in a satin black and opted for one of its preserved liveries, which meant lots of colour and detail painting, which I quite like doing but rarely get the chance, so this is a sort of bonus build for me. With painting nearly complete, I suppose I'd better put some wheels underneath this thing, and this leads me into one of those Americanisms that really does great. The tender has two bogies, not trucks, bogies. I suspect I'll cop some flack for that, but hey ho. The age of this kit showed itself while I was building these wheel sets, because being of some age, the plastic had gone a little bit brittle, and the fit was supposed to be force fit, and I ended up snapping some of the parts. I made them good, and everything seemed to work really well once I'd assembled the wheel sets onto the underside of the tender. However, I wasn't so lucky with the driving wheels. They came in two halves, with a half stub axle on each wheel, and the connecting lugs snapped off, which also meant that it was damn difficult to get them together and to ride correctly, and also to get the quartering right. The base plate held the wheels in place, the valve gear attached to the leading wheel, which enabled me to put the connecting rods on. The pins holding the connecting rods on have a little bit of friction on them inside the wheel, so I decided not to glue them, just in case in some miraculous thing in the future I decide to make it work a little bit better than it does. I bought two things to enhance this model just a little bit. One is the brass handrail, and two was some transfers from Fox, which were general lining and alpha graphics. The transfers that came in the kit were just not usable. They were far too gone. They're cracked and crazed, and if I'd put them in water, they'd have just exploded all over the place. So I was a bit disappointed that I couldn't put all of the decals on that were supplied on the original sheet, but at least I got something on which made a fair representation of what should be. I was going to try and push this along the railway with another engine, but because I was somewhat defeated by the valve gear and the driving wheel issues, it's just going to end up being a static display. Now, obviously, it wouldn't have run anyway because A, there was no motor included, and B, it's got plastic wheels. Still, I have rather enjoyed putting this one together, and because there's similar things still on the market, I may well do another one in the future. Because I have just taken receipt of a Dapol Evening Star, a Kitmaster City of Truro, and a Revel Big Boy. They are going to be future projects. Next up is a signal box kit. Then after that I think I'm going to complete some unfinished projects. In the meantime, thanks for watching. See you next time.